I'm Sheila Demers, preschool coordinator. I think I've met you all. Sophia Fowler, she's one of our preschool teachers. And Katie Gagnon is president or leader of the parent support group here in town. So we might have Katie talk a little bit about the parent support group because they do all kinds of great trainings and supports for parents within town. And so what we'd like to do is to have a couple different workshops throughout the year for parents to kind of find out what your needs are and then look at some of the areas that we could maybe help. We did one workshop a few months ago, or maybe it was a month ago, where we talked about the special ed process. We had Maureen Shields from the Parent Information Center come and talk about the whole special ed process, because for parents coming from early intervention or even brand new to special education, there's so many laws and so many things that it's like a whole different language when you come in and you try to figure out, what does this mean and what do I do about my child, and what if I don't like what they propose, what do I do about it? And I know you've all been through it and you've all learned through the process, but for some parents it's just overwhelming and they just have so many questions. So that's why we did that topic. Today's topic is on challenging behavior, and everyone has challenging behavior in their lives, whether you have children with special needs or typical children, it's just part of the game. But when you have children with special needs, and a lot of times they don't have the language to tell you what they're feeling, or other things interfere, it's confusing for the children, and then it's confusing for you, and it's just a constant struggle sometimes. So what Sophia and I wanted to do is to talk about challenging behavior and give you some guidelines of things that we've found to be helpful in the school setting as well as home too, because we've worked with children with special needs for many years and we might have some ideas. And at the same time, you're all experts too, because you've all brought up your own children, so you might be able to help each other out, some things that have helped with your children in the program. So feel free to jump in and say, this worked for me, but the sensory things got in the way, and this really antagonized the situation. So feel free to join in.
So to kind of introduce the PowerPoint, we were able to find Maureen Conroy did a beautiful presentation for challenging behaviors. We tailored it way back. It was about 80 pages, and 80 pages was just way too much. So we kind of focused on what was really, really important with learning the behaviors. So I'd really like to thank Maureen for doing such a fantastic job with the PowerPoint. If you guys have questions kind of as we go along, or that kind of thing, you can either write them down and ask us at the end, or you can ask us during. That's totally okay as we go. So let's dig in. So we're addressing challenging behavior in early childhood strategies. It was meant for teachers and trainers, but we found that these slides were really important for parents. So the purpose is to provide an overview of what challenging behavior is, present techniques for identifying the reasons for challenging behavior. So not only is it, okay, I see what my child is doing, but kind of what is the purpose of what they are doing? What is their end result? What do we want to get to? Or what is their reason for acting out? Challenging behavior can be a way of communicating, especially when you have a child who has language delays or challenges with communicating. And some proactive interventions that you can do to address those challenging behaviors. So challenging behaviors are ones that cause injury to themselves. A common theme among autistic children sometimes is head banging. So that is definitely an injurious behavior to themselves. Damage to the physical environment. So throwing things, breaking toys is damage to their environment. It's a lot of times out of a frustration or interfering with learning new skills. So learning whether it's threading beads or whether it's learning how to socialize in a classroom, and things that socially isolate your child. So when they're not making friends and they're not able to go into groups and things like that. So they're behaviors that are inappropriate for the child's developmental level or cultural background. So children with challenged behaviors a lot of times are a lot younger than what their chronological age is. You don't expect to see 5-year-olds still throwing tantrums on the floor, but sometimes that's their way of showing that there's a challenge before them and they need some help in order to get through it. Behaviors that are a challenge for educators and family members. So at home, you're seeing things that are entirely different sometimes than what we're seeing at schools. So that's not an uncommon thing to happen. But those are all part and parcel that school needs to know about those behaviors, so we can try and figure out ways to help at home and things like that. Or maybe it's something that is happening at school that is causing the behaviors at home. So always share with your educator, teacher, child teacher, whatever, what's going on and things that you're seeing. Sometimes new things crop up as you're going along and you don't anticipate it, but if we don't know about it, it's hard for us to help.
It's great to put that in the daily book too, if you write a little note or if the teacher writes back to you, because sometimes those things, maybe if they didn't sleep well or they didn't eat breakfast, those can affect their day at school too. So I'm sure that a lot of you have little home school notebooks, and that's helpful too, to let the teacher know and vice versa.
And so how do those behaviors make us feel? I know that as a parent myself, when my children have given me challenging behaviors, I'm always like, oh gosh, here we go. So it's always good to pay attention to how these behaviors make you feel, whether they make you feel embarrassed or whether they make you feel frustrated yourself because you're sitting here and saying, I don't have the tools to try to figure out how to help you. I can see that there's an issue, but I myself am kind of checked out because what do I do now? What's the next step I need to take? So a good way to look at it is to change your view first. A lot of the action, children are children. That's just the way they're going to be. But you as an adult have the ability to rationalize through how to help your child and how to make these changes. So take the problem away from the child and ask yourself, why is the behavior occurring? So one of the things I like to always consider when I look at my children is that their outward behavior is an outward expression of their inward frustration. So they may not be able to tell me what's going on, so they're going to show me that they're frustrated. So if I back up, rather than addressing the behavior of tantruming on the floor and saying, what are we trying to get at here? What's the frustration? What was our catalyst? Step back and start asking a question, why? Rather than being reactive, be proactive. Okay? If I step back, I can take a deep breath, walk away for a minute, come back, and then we can address these things. So what changes can I make to prevent the problem from occurring, to teach a child new skills? So that's saying, okay, is the problem you wanted to have a drink and we needed to offer you more choices? Or was the problem I gave you the red cup, you wanted the blue cup, and how can we solve this problem moving forward? So always ask yourself, why? What is the reason for what I'm seeing? So understanding challenging behaviors. Form, what does the behavior look like? Is it a tantrum on the floor? Is it throwing things? Is it pulling hair? Is it banging, their head? What does it look like when they're acting out? A lot of the stuff you'll see. There are some soft things like twisting hair, up close to their head. You may not see it till a child gets a haircut. So just paying attention to those things. And the functions. What is the purpose of the behavior? From the child's perspective, if they act out, what are they going to get? Or what are they trying to accomplish? What does it give them? Does it give them the movement that they need, or does it give them that vocalization of expression if you have language and they're frustrated because their communication board isn't working for them? So what is the purpose of what they're trying to get to? Any questions so far? Am I going too fast? So forms of challenging behavior, the aggressive forms there, hitting, scratching, kicking, biting. Biting can be biting themselves or even other kids. Throwing things, pinching, threatening, but it can also be things like aggressiveness towards animals. Dogs love children, but when children are having issues, it doesn't matter what they're going to lash out at. Sometimes it's siblings and those kinds of things, so just be aware of what that aggression is. The tantruming with the screaming, crying, whining. I'm hoping none of your children are getting into the cussing. They're a little young, but not that it wouldn't happen. And other forms of tantrums too. So not just the screaming and the crying, but and the non-compliance. If they're refusing to respond, they dig their heels in, they turn into kind of no bones and fall to the floor as a non-compliance, and or very passive when you make a request of them to do something. So the social withdrawal, social situations are very challenging for children to be able to interpret. Not only do they have to figure out their own behavior, but they're trying to figure out what's going on in the situation. So a lot of times it's much easier to just check out than it is to try to figure out how to engage. So if they're primarily playing alone, if they don't respond to their peers' attempts to engage with them, so children will come along, hand another child a toy, and because your child doesn't understand how to engage, they just kind of do the, okay, and just passively let the whole thing go by because they don't know how. Gets into self-injurious behaviors, and then other behaviors that you may be seeing in your own homes. This isn't, complete list because every child is unique, but it kind of gives you an idea of those kinds of things that you're looking at. So for challenging behaviors. And some of those things you also see at school. So if a child is using their behavior of biting to explain their frustration at home, it is entirely possible that we would see biting at school as a way that they're exposing their frustration. So maybe that's where I said maybe they're not biting their friends, maybe they're biting themselves, but that's their way of showing their frustration. So why do the children have these behaviors, and what's the purpose or outcome for the child? So what are they trying to get at? If they're biting themselves, are they trying to get at that they're telling you that they're frustrated with the situation? If a child just comes up and starts yelling at you and saying, no! Okay, well, why are you telling me no? Obviously, you're yelling at me for a reason. You didn't start off yelling, so what are we trying to get at? Are you finding that, putting the dishes away is hard, or are you finding that you don't know how to link your train tracks together to make them connect, and you're frustrated and all you can tell me is no? So looking beyond that, or what is the reason for them yelling or showing that behavior? So the three functions of challenging behavior, they want to either get something, escape from something, or stimulate. So obtaining something is, getting your attention. Children will throw things to get your attention, especially if you're doing something, making dinner or whatever it is, and they're off and breaking things, and you're like, whoa, hold the phone, let's not, break everything in the house. Come on back, you have my attention now, because we don't want things broken. Or to escape from something. When things are hard, we all do it. When things are hard, the easiest thing to do is say, no thank you, and to walk away. So in those instances, escaping is the easiest way to say, we're not going to do this, I'm just going to get up and walk away. I'm not going to sit with you, I'm not going to engage with you. And the self-stimulation part is looking at do you need a movement break? So are you biting yourself because you're so frustrated you need a movement break, you just need to get away and get your head in the right spot again. So some of that is that self-stimulating behavior.
And we see a lot of that escape behavior in the class, too, especially around circle time or large group activities. The kids just feel like it's too overwhelming or too long, and they just will do anything they can to get out of that area, even if it's misbehavior, because then they get to escape, go someplace else. So, it's that fine line between how much do you push it and how much do you let it go and come up with alternative activities. So.
And another escaping behavior is usually around homework. I don't think any of your children have homework just yet, but escaping around homework is very common. Homework is hard. Not only do I have to sit here and do it after being in school for 6 to 8 hours a day, but now I've got to engage my brain again for something that was challenging to begin with. So homework is a great time for kids to go, I've checked out, I'm done. And so it's important to realize why they need to escape from what they're doing. And then what can you do to help them if they're doing something like that? So this was kind of a picture of what the function is of a child. So there's a 4-year-old throwing a temper tantrum at the grocery store. Love that. That's always so much fun. Been there myself. but is told, no, we're not getting candy today. And he continues to tantrum, and then the person says, all right, just here, have it. We've all done it. I myself have done it, I know. So then the child, when we look at this, the function is the child's trying to get something. So if I throw a tantrum, I'm going to get what I want. Which, in your own self, your feelings then are you embarrassed by what's going on? Your child's making this loud scene. People are staring. Then there start to be why can't this lady get her child under control? Well, it's not that easy, especially when you have a child that's challenging.
But then when you give in, the next time you go, it repeats itself, or it gets worse because they know that they can get away with it. Last time Mommy got me the candy, so this time it's going to work, and I'll push it a little bit further.
Exactly.
So that's why it becomes spiral.
So looking at the situation where the behavior occurs, so as you're standing at the grocery store and you're going, okay, I know when we get to this point that we end up with a temper tantrum because of the M&Ms. So describe the challenging behavior, is all the screaming, and then what events are usually associated with the behavior. It's usually around grocery shopping or the Target checkout or wherever there's candy kind of thing. So being able to assess all that, but a lot of times assessing it in the moment is very difficult. So don't try to do it in the heat of the moment. Try to do it when you're home and not, you can step back. Sometimes it's easier at that moment to give in and say, okay, this is definitely an issue for us. We're going to take a look at this and we're going to make a plan on how to change the behaviors moving forward. So the outcome of the behavior, attaining adult attention, getting the activity, the food or the toy, escaping. So always identifying what is the reason why. So the purpose of Alex's behavior was to escape. No, that's not the right one. Anyway, the purpose of his behavior was to get the M&Ms, ultimately. So teaching them to request what they want. From there, like teaching them to request the M&Ms, ask me nicely, or can we replace it with something if we're at the checkout counter. So replacing it with something like we can get a banana and not M&Ms. We can get an apple, we can get water, so sometimes an alternative replacement may solve the same problem. A lot of the grocery stores are starting now to sell those bananas, or one of them had a banana and apple program or something like that with a card. So sometimes a replacement thing will solve the same problem.
No candy aisle.
No candy aisle.
There was another one there, and I know we probably didn't go over the whole thing, but it was one about students acting up during a fine motor tasks at school, because a lot of children have great oral language, great academic skills, but when they go to write something or make a picture of something, they don't have the fine motor skills, and they get frustrated with that. So a lot of times you see them breaking the pencils or throwing things because they just don't want to be bothered with that because they know it's hard for them. So we see that a lot with children too. So we have to give them some different ways of doing it, like maybe a task strip, for us then, 3 steps, so that makes it a little bit easier. So it's not such an overwhelming task. If it's broken down into parts, it's a little bit easier. Or maybe giving them some sensory activities before, maybe some squeezing activities before, to make it a little bit easier. Because you start to realize what might set them off and what are the weaknesses, and then develop programs around that too.
So developing proactive and preventative interventions. So what can you do to change the behavior? And how can I change or modify the factors that contribute to the behavior? And what can I teach the child to use in place of what they're doing? And to be able to get the same outcome that they want. So instead of screaming and tantruming, ask me for the M&Ms. Even if it's just a one-word utterance, a please and a point that goes with it to what they want, is far more functional overall than screaming and tantruming and throwing themselves on the floor. And then asking yourself what I can do to change the behavior then puts it on you and says, I can help you before we get to this point. So how will I teach the replacement behavior? That's one way of doing it, one way of teaching it. and how can I make sure I'm not reinforcing the outcome of the challenging behavior, and then reinforce like replacement behavior. So all of that was kind of part and parcel together. So the physical arrangement would be things like when you're sitting in the shopping cart, do they need more space of sitting in the basket, or do they need more confinement of sitting in the seat? Finding out kind of where they need that space. In a classroom, we look at it as things like, do they need a quiet space with a book that's away from the other kids? Do they need, looking at the other area, so the density of the area, the physical boundaries of the area, do we need to be able to sit underneath something and so that it's a little quieter, a little darker? The room is really bright, so when you're talking about sensory things like that, all of that comes into play when you're talking about a physical arrangement. So when you're looking at that, it's also, you've looked at physical arrangements in your own homes. It's how you set up your furniture. So you set it up either for the flow of the room or the way that your furniture fits. But all of that also plays into, at home, how a child interprets their area. So if their seat on the table is on the far side, which is furthest from the door, maybe that's causing a lot of undue stress and it's coming in at dinner time, where if all you did was move them to where their back is at the window because the cool breeze coming in is far more relaxing, and now they're able to get through dinner. So physical arrangement can have a lot to do with, even in your own homes, with some of that behavior. So seating arrangements and materials. Sometimes they may have a favorite material, a favorite pen. They prefer markers over crayons. They need a squeeze ball at the dinner table to keep their hands going in order to be able to get their hands activated to be able to use utensils. All of that comes into play. So organizational, in the classroom, we tend to use schedules. This is where we talk about transitions and staffing patterns and classroom rules. If you were to project this into your house, you're looking at your own routines. Now your routines are embedded. Our bedtime routine is a very embedded routine with a lot of parents. We brush our teeth, we get on our pajamas, we read a book, we go to bed. It's that disruption of some of those routines, so that's a schedule. Our schedules look a little more like, okay, we have it listed out, we're going to do circle, we're going to do those kinds of things, which you don't necessarily do at your home, but you still have some of those same routines. Our classroom rules, a lot of times same basic classroom rules, our home rules, we don't hit, we don't bite and those kinds of things, but you have your at-home rules. We're not running through the house, we're not bouncing a ball in the house. So you have those too. And transitions. You transition into and out of your cars, or you transition, very quickly. Oh, we've got to go to the store real quick. All of that is transitions. We have classroom transitions between activities, or transitions of we're going outside to the playground and then coming back in. You may have swing sets and things in your yard. So those are all part of transitions within a child's day that you can associate from looking at your home and seeing we have very similar transitions. But transitions can cause challenging behaviors too.
I'd like to say one thing about visual schedules too. They seem to help a lot. I know in the classroom they each have their own visual schedule of each activity they do, and they take off the little symbol and put it in the all done envelope when they're through. And that's teaching them to kind of set up a program to follow so that they know what comes next, and they have choices in that too. And a lot of times parents can do that at home, maybe a nighttime activity, you take a bath, read a book, those kinds of things, and they can help devise the plan so they know what comes next. And once it's on the schedule, it makes it a little bit easier. It's not like you're getting into a power play with them, and I said you have to do this now, and it seems to help a lot of children.
So one of the electronic things we all have on us is a cell phone, and in most cell phones you can make photo albums. Yes. So when you make a photo album, you can name it whatever you want to name it. So you don't necessarily have to have a social story app or an app that has these visual schedules, although there's some free ones out there. But if you have an album, you have all the pictures you need right in your phone. So you pull it up and you go, we're going to go see Grandpa, and we're going to go see Grandma, and now you've got it on the fly. So if you ever have to make it while you're, I forgot we're walking into Target, let's take a picture of the checkout counter because we're going to need that when I go, it's time for us to leave. We need to choose our banana, candy, whatever it is. So first we choose, then we do the checkout. And now you have a visual schedule on the fly without having any sort of like little, like paper and icons is really handy, but I don't carry paper and icons with me, I carry my phone with me. So if you know, oh, I'm stopping for milk on the way home, I totally forgot, and we're together, and we're just gonna do this. So, I mean, we've all had those moments of, I've gotta do this, it's now or never, and I'm not coming back out. So do it on the fly with your phone. So if you teach them, because they'll look at your phone, kids like technology, and now you've got, oh, first we're doing this, and then we're, you know, and you can, like, so you pick up milk and you're going, there's a milk thing, see, we have milk first, now we're going to the next one. What do you think the next one is? So engaging them in that conversation, and then you've taken the picture, and right before you leave, you can go back to the beginning. We bought milk, we bought bread, we bought bananas, now we're going to checkout. And now you have your visual schedule on the fly. So now you're working with them as they're going through everything you've just done. It's a little, like, time consuming in the moment in that it takes you 30 seconds to take the picture, maybe not even 15 seconds, but once you've got it, now you've got that visual schedule right there. And so for those places that you happen to frequent that you know your child doesn't like to go to, you can take pictures of those things as you're doing it.
And some people even put up a little Velcro tab on the back seat with the child sitting so they can see where they're going next with pictures if you don't want to use the phone or something. So, and then there's always, like Dr. Bullock used to say, zig-a-zag, or something that would come up that you don't expect, and you have to stop there. So they're going to have to get used to these. You know, something might crop up that we have to stop it for gas, and we weren't planning on it or something like that. And it's okay. And what Katie was referring to is social stories. Those are little stories that are developed around something that makes a child anxious. Let's say going to the dentist, you know, they're really nervous about going to the dentist. You can write a little story about, you know, we're going to go to the dentist, he's going to check your teeth, and he's going to do this and that. And, you know, you may not feel that comfortable, but these are some things you can do. And you can kind of come up with a little story, maybe 4 or 5 pages, about what you can do and what this will feel like, so that they kind of know where it's going to go and how to handle it, you know, kind of role rehearsal type thing. The other thing is, if you need some of these pictures for different activities or something, just send in a list of what you need pictures for, like maybe for the routine for bedtime or something. And Jerry and Lisa and the therapist are great at sending home the pictures. So, you know, if you can't find the pictures, I know they do have a lot online, but if you'd like some pictures for different things, just send in the pictures, the list of them, and tell them I told you that's okay to to send out those pictures, because we have a system that's called Board Maker, and it has all the pictures that you ever would want, so it might be helpful. Excuse me.
So in the classrooms, we have schedules for arriving, consistent times for doing things, the length of the activity, cleaning up and transitioning routines. So describing each of those. When you arrive home, it's not really functional to just drop your jacket on the floor. So when you arrive home, having one of those picture task strips to say, first we have to put our jacket away and put your backpack on the chair. And then you're free to go. Being consistent about the same thing. So if you're trying to have bedtime at 8 o'clock, make sure you're consistent with bedtime at 8 o'clock. There are zigzag days, and that lets you know those changes. It's the wonderful, wonderful thing. I've been in Melissa's classroom several times with some of her kids. Let me tell you, the second I tried to change something, they let me know whether or not something was changed. So that's the fantastic piece, is when you have that consistency, then they start to vocalize when things change. And you're right. We're having a zigzag. You and I are going to do this together. We can do it. And the length of the activity, just be aware of that. You know, if going to grandma's house is a very stressful thing, then you know you need to increase the amount of support, and so you may need to increase the amount of things you bring. Or say, you're right, we're going for 15 minutes, I'm setting my timer right here. This is 15 minutes, it's on your phone, you have it with you. We're going to be done in 15 minutes, and then stay consistent with something like that. Cleaning up is always very difficult, having some reason why they need to clean up. We need to clean up for safety, in case I need to come get you, those kinds of things, so I can access you. That's usually a big cleaning up your room at night thing. But a lot of that transition between, we have to clean up first, so first we clean up and then we come and we have our snack, or first we clean up and then we have dinner. Productive learning times, meaning When you get home, if you know your child's exhausted by 6 o'clock, don't start homework at 6. Then start homework a little early. I'm not that you guys have homework right now, but projecting ahead, eventually you will have homework. So just planning that. Or if you know Friday night is not the day to do it, then Saturday morning when they're awake, or Sunday morning when things are quiet and they're still comfortable in their pajamas, is maybe a good time. And explaining changes. Kids that don't have a lot of language doesn't necessarily mean that they don't understand what you're saying. It just means that they can't convey to you verbally. There are some receptive issues out there, and I totally acknowledge that. But explaining then takes the stress out of what's going on. So with part of that visual schedule, that's the kind of the visual way of explaining what's going on. If you don't have a visual schedule, never discount what your words can provide. Sometimes making your sentences smaller and making your sentences more to the point. So if I'm trying to convey to you that it's time to eat, and I'm going, and I'm hungry and I start acting out, basically eat now. Oh, you're right, now's the time to eat. I understood, eat now. So reduce what you have to convey when you're explaining changes. So a schedule is a group of symbols or objects, pictures, written words, anything that informs the child what's going to happen during a period of time. You can do the same thing for dinner. First we're going to say grace, and then we're going to eat dinner, and then we're going to sit and talk and play a game, or then we're going to have dessert, or first we're going to eat our vegetables, and then we're going to eat our meat. You break it down to whatever way the child finds most functional. So the purpose of the schedule is to give the child information about the day, to teach them to be independent. The greatest job ever is working yourself out of being a parent and making your child independent on their own. So as a parent, you're constantly working yourself out of a job. So to facilitate interaction with peers and teachers and family members, that's all part of when we're talking about social stories. That's kind of it looks like a schedule, but it's also a story, which facilitates some of that interaction. So a schedule is useful for everybody. We've all had schedules, whether we've had classes in high school and you receive the schedule about where you're supposed to go next. We've all found schedules helpful in a day. So children who have difficulties with transitions really find schedules helpful, and children who need predictability and structure, and children who need visual cues. So visual cues are things like those prompts. So if I held up the toothbrush picture and kind of waited, is the child going to understand what's coming next, or do they need more of a prompt, a picture, and a verbal cue? It's time to brush our teeth. This is what's next. So some of those visual cues. Typical transitions through your routines, that they're clearly outlined so that it's not something that's vague. When we were talking about pictures, was things being very specific, and with our picture strips, especially in the school system, it's very clear, having one so when they come in, first we take off our mittens, then we take off our hat, and then we take off our jacket. You've got a picture of their cubby. You've got then a picture of, now we address your backpack, take your folder out, go find your name on the name board. So sometimes it's broken down so it's very clearly outlined what's going on. If any of your children have picture strips in the classrooms, take a look at them. A lot of them are like 15 pictures deep with a pocket on the bottom. And they know, oh, this is what's happening next. I put this at the top because when I'm done, I take this one off and then I put the next one at the top. You can factor in things like going to the bathroom. You can have a bathroom picture strip, which are things like when we get into the bathroom, the first thing we do is we address our button on our pants or wash our hands or those kinds of things. So all of those steps, depending what your child needs.
A lot of them have the washing hands sequence strips so that they can do it independently. For us, I get some soap, then I wash, then I dry, because a lot of them would just get up there and start playing in the water and forget what they were there for. So it kind of helps them look back at the pictures, like, what comes next, And
if you think about your taste of success, when you taste a little bit of success, especially with being independent, you want more because you like that feeling of how successful you are and how praised you were for doing that. So that sets your child up for that, again, positive feedback loop of success. So when they start with something small, feel successful, then you up the ante and make it a little bit more each time. And practicing wait time. That's, I know, my hardest part is practicing that. I gotta give you time to think, how much time is too much. And if you actually think about it, the wait time that you give a child, a normal, typical child under 5, an appropriate wait time is almost like 25 to 30 seconds for them to pull their thoughts together. That is a long time when all you're doing is sitting and waiting. But if you factor in that wait time for them to process and think, You may be surprised at what they can do on their own. The hard part is not getting impatient with yourself because you're going, okay, I've got to do this. So just remember to take a step back and pick your moments. So not every moment is going to be your transition teaching moment of waiting. We have lives. We have to move on to other things. So pick your moments when you're going to factor in that practicing that wait time with yourself and with the child.
And with the transitions too, and being able to give them some kind of idea of, in 5 minutes we're going to do this. Well, a lot of the kids don't understand what 5 minutes is, so either a visual timer or even, popsicle sticks, or 5 of them, for us, we'll take one away and then another one. So they start to develop a clear understanding of what 5 minutes is, because, a lot of us say 5 minutes and then, you want to leave in one, and other times you might give them an extra 5 minutes, so the kids get confused with time. So there's different ways you can do it. Even with cell phones, there are little apps for it, but different things, to help them understand. Maybe even an egg timer to know, when that's up, then we're leaving. And I'm sure you all have things that you use in your homes too to help them. But the worst thing you can do is just to say, we're doing it right now, and then get upset with them because they're not going to leave the Lego thing that they're making because they're not ready. To kind of give them time to prepare for it is the best thing, so you don't get into that power struggle.
So then, the teacher responsibilities in the classroom, they develop materials so that the child can be increasingly independent. They present information, visual, auditory, tactile modalities. So if a child needs to be able to touch something, if they need to be able to see something, if they need to see it and hear it. So narrowing all of that down. When children are very young, though, keep in mind, I don't know if all of your children are in preschool. I know your child's a little bit older. But a lot of times for that very first year, it's really discovering what the child needs and what is their way of learning, and then fine-tuning that as you're going along. So that's definitely, and then kind of carrying it with them moving forward. Eventually children may grow out of it, or they may need it a lot longer than you thought they did. But as long as it creates that independence and success, that's fantastic. And then to provide additional support when needed. So a lot of the classrooms, especially at the preschool level, have a few paraprofessionals in them. Not entirely sure about the upper, once you get into the higher grades, what they have for adult supports and things like that. But
as needed.
Yeah, as needed. But there are always additional adults kind of floating around to say, hey, do you need a hand? What do we need to do? How can I help this child? Those kinds of things. So teaching replacement behaviors is, so when the function is appropriate, but the form is not appropriate, what can I teach to replace and get the same outcome? So we touched on that very briefly with the M&Ms, of when they give you the appropriate behavior, rewarding them with what it is, and you've got the same outcome of, the child has the same outcome, they got what they wanted, but they expressed themselves very appropriately. So choosing a behavior replacement, the choice kind of comes from you as the adult. What do you want them to do differently? Do you want them to request? How do you want them to react differently? Do you want them to tell you when they're frustrated? Do you want, instead of banging your head against the wall because they don't know how to process through picking up all the toys they have on the floor, I'd rather have you come look at me and say, help me. Give me a picture that says help me, or something like that to replace. So it gets you to the same ending of addressing the mess that's on the floor, but now you've changed the behavior. And then teaching the behavior that helps the child achieve the purpose easier, quicker, and better. So you as the adult can process through the whole process of, well, in order to pick up the floor, we need to start here, we need to start there. So then setting the child up for that success with that, first I'm going to put one toy away and you're going to put a toy, and if we're going to start like this and reduce the frustration. So making sure that what they're doing is streamlined, so it's not going to last forever. Is their capability right now picking up 5 toys and you pick up the rest? That may be where they're at. But if they pick up those 5, then next time you add one more and make it 6. to the point where then they're picking up all of their toys independently.
Yeah,
Sometimes you have to start small.
the thing is maybe to choose one behavior to work on at a time. I know sometimes we get frustrated with it. There's so many things wrong. We want to fix them all at once. But it's easier to work on one thing and try to get that under control and then move on to another behavior so that it's not so overwhelming for the child or for you.
Teaching replacement behaviors. So how will I teach it? What are the goals and expectations of the situation? And how much instruction is needed to teach the child these skills? Some children pick up on things very quickly. So some children are already reading and some children are already, they just need to be shown or told. Other children need a lot of reinforcement. Kids are little. They don't understand the big world around them. And that's where you come in. And earlier when it was talking about consistency, that's consistency with instruction too. And consistency in the same situations. So making sure that the instruction that you're giving is either very tailored and very short and concise, or do they need more information because now you're looking, they need more physical. I'll go back to the situation of running behind a car where you're going, look, see how tall you are? See, we're not even up to the window yet, they can't see you. So now you're putting something very concrete into their way of learning that they're going, oh, right. It's not everybody has a backup camera, or not everybody has a window that's low enough where they could see me. You're not tall enough. Those kinds of things all kind of play into that. So paying attention to how much instruction, and then just being repetitive. Parenthood is all about being repetitive. We're repetitive in a classroom with the things that we teach. Sometimes our repetition is a little different, so it might be lacing beads one day, it might be lacing spaghetti noodles another day, but it's all lacing. So there's a lot of the repetition, sometimes just changing up like what materials or whatever you're using. But always make sure that you have an end goal in sight. And as parents and partners, you want to make sure you're both on the same goal, making sure that you're both headed in the same direction. I'm a person that's very visual, so having a visual idea of this is what we're trying to get at. So don't be, writing yourself a note on the board is not a bad thing. Your child can't read it, but then you and your partner or everybody is on the same page. When you have older children in the home too, keeps them on the same page. So in this situation, this is what we're doing. Please use this language, everybody on the same page. And then that way, all that reinforcement's happening from everybody. Be consistent in setting expectations and stick to them. And then reinforce the replacement behavior. So how often do you need to reinforce it? And with whom do you need to reinforce it? Is it reinforcing it with everybody, where like I just talked about, or is it do you only need to reinforce it with the one child? And that's where those notes, chalkboard paint, so you can paint a wall and you can erase it and write these beautiful, messages on it, so it almost looks like a piece of art. But yeah. And then how to make sure you're not reinforcing the challenging behavior. So these are questions just to ask yourself. So what are you doing now that may be reinforcing the challenging behavior? And that was back to the M&Ms at the beginning, where kind of you just cave in, and now every time, and then it can become bigger and better things. How can we change the response? I have my own knee-jerk responses of go, that kind of thing. So paying attention to your own personal responses to the behavior can definitely help. Being consistent with the response, what reminders do you need? If you're out and about, maybe it's not a chalkboard that you need, but maybe you need something more like one of those silly rubber bracelets or something like that to remind you, you're right, I need to stop, I need to give you time to process first, those kinds of things. And then how do you want to reinforce the replacement behavior? So in the classrooms we have tokens, whether it's stickers or M&Ms or things like that. What do you want to carry with you? Do you want to have stickers with you? Do you want to have the sticker book with you? Do you want to have the M&Ms with you? Is it gum? Because your child loves to move, and so chewing is a movement activity. So what is it that they really key in on? And acknowledge the fact, too, that children change their choices. And they change them at a moment's notice without telling you. So they may one day love gum, mint gum, and the next day they're going, oh no, I don't like mint gum, had a bad experience, I got in my hair, I don't know, whatever. So don't discount that they may end up changing what they like. They go from Paw Patrol to Octonauts. They go from, lollipops to I don't know, something else. So just don't let that take you off guard. And then in those instances, just explain, this is what I have, and this is what I can give you now. We will look at getting you whatever else it is that I will carry with me for next time. So
I know in Jerry's class, she'll ask the children, what do you want to earn? You might hear that at home too. I want to earn some time in the art center, or I want to earn to play with the trains. So it kind of throws it back at them, and then maybe set up a little sticker chart or some kind of chart so that they can earn it. Every time I see you behaving, nicely with your friends, you earn a check, and then when you get 5, you can play with it, with the trains or whatever. But throws it back at them because, like Sophia said, it keeps changing. They might like something one day, and the next day they want nothing to do with it, so they're going to act up because they're not interested in earning that. So they kind of know what they like.
And decide what you want the child to use, when you want the child to use the replacement behavior. It takes some time to ease into those things. So do you want to start consistently with dinner time? Do you want to start consistently with dropping off at school? That's a huge transition. So just pick your initial battle very small. And then when you've mastered that, because then at that point you have the skills and you have your own resources to pull from to adjust to those transitions and things like that. So start small and then start working out. And ignore the challenging behavior or only minimally attend to the behavior. So when they are screaming and crying and carrying on, sometimes it can be very hard to ignore the behavior, especially when they're just falling on the floor and melting down into a puddle. But do your very best, make sure they're safe. That's primary. Children need to be safe first, but then just kind of ignore the behavior. You're right, you can act out. So thank you all for coming, but if you have additional questions, you're more than welcome to stay and ask questions, or if you'd rather email, you can always email through Sheila or directly to your teacher.